Hello and welcome back to the MatchDay Review Podcast Instant Replay, where we have just finished watching Wolfsburg versus Borussia Dortmund. Score finished 2-0 to Dortmund. What did you make of the game, Lewis? Unfortunately, we may have made a bad choice on this one.
Yeah, especially when we saw that Bayer Leverkusen won 3-1 against Borussia Mönchengladbach. What do I make of the game? I feel it was very scrappy and very bitty in the first half, not a lot of quality. Wolfsburg were more physical, Dortmund were very tentative. Then a bit of quality from Achraf Hakimi through to Thorgan Hazard, cut across goal, past the ever clinical Erling Haaland, which we could accuse of being Bambi today because he completely earshotted the ball as it travelled through to Rafael Guerreiro, who slotted.
Well, I called penalty, didn't I? As soon as it happened, I thought it'd been tripped in the box, but obviously you watched the replay back and he just completely air kicked it.
Looked so unlike Erling Haaland not to bury it in the bottom corner, and it did at full speed initially look like he'd been brought down, and then, like I say, Rafael Guerreiro slotted it into the bottom corner. But I think Haaland today symbolised what Borussia Dortmund were. That was not really in the game, trying with runs, trying to make something happen, but it just wasn't happening for him today, and it was a very lacklustre and lethargic performance from him.
Yeah, it was a difficult one for Haaland today, wasn't it? It wasn't one of his best games, but a lot of Dortmund's chances, as we saw last week, again we picked up on this, was they came from their wing backs. You know, the quality they've got there in Guerreiro, whose name I still can't say properly, and Hakimi as well. Both of them scoring today. But again, a lot of their chances came down that right and left-hand side rather than through the middle.
Yeah, it's again that 5-3-1-1 type formation that Dortmund are employing at the moment with three centre-backs. It seems to be catching a lot of teams unaware, particularly the likes of Schalke last week and Wolfsburg today, who weren't capable to adapt on the fly throughout the game to nullify what those fullbacks were given in that formation. I did think they did a good job, particularly in the first half, of marking Julian Brandt at the game. He became a bit of a non-entity, and you saw that when he got dragged off for Jadon Sancho in the second half.
Yeah, that's probably why he was taken off. You know, we say managers don't adapt, but realising that Brandt was being a bit, you know, like you said, nullified in the middle, that Dortmund's attack was a bit, Tuchel was coming through the middle, it was all coming down the wing, sticking on another winger, adding a bit of pace onto the break that they were trying to execute. You know, it just makes sense. But I think Wolfsburg were better at it than Schalke were last week. I know we said Schalke were shocking, but at least this week Wolfsburg offered a little bit going forward as well, and possibly should have come away with it, maybe even a point, given the way that the chances they had in the second half.
Yeah, for me, they had more clear-cut chances than Dortmund did throughout the game. I thought they had a massive outlet that they didn't capitalise on, with Kevin and Babu crossing it in from deep from a full-back position. He put 3 or 4 quality balls in the first half, but there was again no urgency up front for Wolfsburg. There was no one making that gambling run, no one willing to challenge Mats Hummels in the air with a header, and it came all a bit routine for the goalkeeper Roman Berkry and the 3 centre halves. Granted, Lucas Piszczek tried to make defending look as difficult as anyone I've ever seen on a football field today.
You mentioned Mats Hummels. He was taken off at half time and replaced with Emre Can, and that for me was when Dortmund looked a bit more vulnerable at the back. You know, Wolfsburg had that chance; they could have been level within 5 minutes of the restart. Through with a one-on-one, and I can't remember who it was now. The striker for Wolfsburg spooned it onto the bar.
Weghorst.
Martin Weghorst. He spooned it onto the bar in his one-on-one chance, and they did look a bit disjointed at that back three when you take Hummels out. Very little organisation going on, you know, missing that leadership in the back. Because to be honest, the experience that Hummels brings to that back line is...
Yeah, it's incomparable. He's massive. He's the most experienced German centre-half still playing the game today, and has been Germany's best centre-half for the past 10 years. But in the first half, I didn't think Hummels looked really comfortable. Maybe he was carrying an injury or something. I feel as though when they were trying to pass the ball around the back three and knock it to Guerreiro or knock it to Hakimi, everything was a little bit rushed and not a lot of skill on it. Not like skill, but it wasn't any purchase on the ball. It wasn't reaching the player he'd passed to with any urgency. And I don't know if his current injury has been taken off as a precaution ahead of the Klassiker on Tuesday night against Bayern Munich. But I just feel as though in the second half, Dortmund got it right when he brought out Emre Can on, because he became more compacted and condensed and effectively just dropped deep into a full block and then try again attacked out on a break with Jadon, Sancho and Erling Haaland. And for me, they became, after that rocky 10-minute period after Hummels has gone off, they became a lot more settled throughout the midfield and the back. I don't know if Emre Can brought that to him, or it was just something that evolved throughout the game because they were dropping that bit deeper.
I think he has got experience playing at centre-back, hasn't he? I think he played there a couple of times for Liverpool. It wasn't something he made a habit of, but I think he's been there before. And I suppose with a player like him being so defensive-minded, he usually plays that defensive midfield role quite well. Dropping into a back three isn't the most alien thing in the world for him.
Yeah, you made the point that it's not as though you're putting David James up front. You're dropping a central defensive midfielder into the heart and pivot of a back three in a 5 at the back formation.
Yeah. What did you make of Jadon Sancho? Then a lot of eyes on him, obviously, with links coming back to the Premier League this transfer window. I think he got a bit more time this week, and I think he looked better this week than he did last week in the brief cameo we saw.
Yeah, he got 30 minutes today, and you see the quality, you see that direct incisiveness in his play, the sure-footedness in his touch, the touch he took when he took it. Yeah, when he took it around a defender and then just slowed everything down, but then hit the accelerator again, and then again as he got closer to the box, he put a little bit of the brakes on so Hakimi could get in front of him and slot him in, and then Hakimi did the rest. It looked like Thierry Henry would have finished, to be honest with you.
It was the decision making that, because you see a lot of players in that situation probably would have either gone themselves or tried to play Haaland in down the middle, but like you said, he slowed it down. He brought it to the edge of the box and then laid it off to the right hand side, which you might think, looking back on it, is the easy choice, but a lot of players don't make that choice.
No, you saw it in the first half that Julian Brandt had the easy ball on twice through the middle to Haaland, but chose to put a foot on it and then go sideways with it. So it's not as though it's always players are bang on, all right, yes, I'll do the main option to put a player through on goal. But for me, Jadon Sancho doesn't get the credit for how much he makes the game look easy and how in control he is all the time. He's making those decisions in split second moments that show a complete clarity of thinking when he's on the field. And I think that holds him in a lot of good stead moving forward, whether that's at Man United or at Dortmund.
Yeah, it's impressive given that he's only 20 years old, but he's now, that assist puts him level on 16 with Thomas Muller for the season, which is that's some going for a 20-year-old.
Some return.
You can see why he's so highly touted across Europe. But we also had a little bit of VAR. We haven't seen it for a while. We even did a thing where we thought it had been scrapped, especially here in the UK, or there was discussion it might have been scrapped because they didn't want the VAR room to be too crowded. But we saw the ref go over to the monitor. Ended up being a red card in the end, but we were both sat here debating whether it was or not, because the contact is clearly there. He stands on the back of his calf, but we made the argument that it wasn't intentional. But then intent isn't always the indicator for the seriousness of a foul.
It was a strange period of the game. It was like everything was all stop-start because there was so many substitutions. And to be honest with you, I wasn't really paying attention at that point in full play. And then everything stopped and the referee was like, I'm going to VAR. And we both looked at each other and was like, what's that for? And then he goes over, they showed a replay on BT Sport, and it just looks so awkward from the Wolfsburg player when he says, he's jumped and then jumped onto the shin of the player, and it doesn't look good when it's slowed down, but at full speed it just looks like a completely mistimed tackle. But you can get the argument that was it premeditated, because the way how high he went up on the calf and the shin of it was Akanji, wasn't it, the centre half for Dortmund? Yeah,
it was Klaus that got sent off for Wolfsburg, and the way I saw it was, I thought he went to clear the ball, and as usually happens, Akanji's got in there a little bit quicker, and by the time he's almost gone to plant his foot on the ball's not there anymore. So in that, you see penalties given for that all the time, where maybe a defender gets caught napping at the back, and as he goes to clear it, the striker just nips in, and you get a foul. So I suppose, looking at it that way, maybe it is a red card, but it didn't seem to me like it was. It wasn't a malicious attempt, I suppose.
I don't know though, Aidan, because I've seen it 4 or 5 times back, and it just looks so unrealistic for something to happen within a football game. The angle that his body's at, how high he goes up on the shin of the Dortmund player. Now he's like in the air and jumping down on it. And I get if it was mistimed, but the more I see it, the more it looks a little bit premeditated.
I guess that's what VAR's there for. But it was good though in English telly to see him go to the monitor. The ref actually made his own mind up, rather than the man in the computer room doing it for him.
And it's always been like that in Germany. Germany have proved that you can use VAR effectively, because he wasn't as though he was agonising over the decision at the monitor. He watched it 2 or 3 times, made his decision, then came back on, and there wasn't all the show around it and the drama. It was just a case of, right, it's a red card, go. And
he looked pretty confident strolling back onto that pitch, didn't he? Like he knew in his mind he'd made the decision that he wanted.
Yeah, granted, he didn't look as confident as the referee in the 2014 World Cup when it's 2018, didn't have VAR in 14, mad. In the 2018 World Cup when Neymar had dove in a penalty box, initially given a penalty, the referee went over to the monitor. I've never seen a referee grin as much as a Cheshire cat as he went on that field for telling Neymar it wasn't a penalty.
The referee won, and he knew it.
Yeah.
The game this evening, then, Bayern Munich are playing against Eintracht Frankfurt. But the important one for Dortmund and Bayern, I suppose, is Tuesday. Bless you.
He's just coming down with this sneezing. What was all that about it?
No idea. But as we were saying, it's the Klassiker on Tuesday. It's pretty much, I would put it in the category of title decider.
Yeah, I think today's result with Dortmund, given how badly they played, and the game could have easily got away from them if Wolfsburg were more clinical, has put more onus on Tuesday night. Because, like we said, if Dortmund lost today, Tuesday night's a non-entity, because Bayern Munich are winning the 7 points clear today, and then they win again on Tuesday and they're 10 points clear. But as we stand now, they're just 1 point ahead with the game in hand. And if Dortmund play like they did today against Bayern Munich on Tuesday night, it'll be a cricket score. Yeah,
the worry comes from, I know they haven't actually conceded the goal since the restart, but my worry for them would be the defensive side of it more than the attacking side. The fact that, they could each score goals this Dortmund side, as we've seen, have scored 16-2. But the defending, I guess, against better opposition, such as Bayern Munich themselves, it could be difficult for them. Especially, like you said, if they play it today.
Yeah, because Wolfsburg didn't really carry an imminent goal threat at any time and looked pretty one-dimensional going forward, and still managed 4 or 5 chances too, which he should have really put away. And also, if they had a player gambling at the back post a couple of times, they'd have had an open goal to slot it into when players fired it across the 6-yard box. And I just think Lucas Piszczek's the main problem, because he's a right back converted into a right centre back and a 3 centre backs in a back 5. And he just looked all at sea today. He was jumping for headers, mistiming it, getting underneath the ball, diving in for tackles, selling himself short, and the Wolfsburg players were just nipping it round the side of him. And you're going from, no disrespect to Wolfsburg, a mid-table Bundesliga side that are industrious, physical, can grind out results and make it difficult for their opposition, to arguably the best team in Europe in Bayern Munich at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose that's the problem with having, if you're playing a back 3 when you've converted a right back into centre back, they are missing Dan Axel Zagadou, who probably played that third centre back role. But with that in mind, would you suggest maybe playing a back 4 against Bayern Munich? But then I guess that probably nullifies what we've seen as Dortmund's best weapon at the minute, and that's the 2 flying fullbacks. Yeah,
well, you can't change the formation because it's shown with Hakimi and Rafael Guerreiro that they're your main attacking outlets, particularly against the Bayern Munich side that are awash with pace, quality, and understand and read the game at a higher level than Schalke last week and Wolfsburg today. And it's all just going to come down to whether Borussia Dortmund are willing to sacrifice Julian Brandt for Emre Can even, or a more defensive, industrious type midfielder who can just stick on Thiago Alcantara and nullify his impact on the game on Tuesday
I imagine
night.
that could be Delaney's job, but I think it could be interesting, the battle of the fullbacks, because obviously for Bayern Munich you've got Alphonso Davies as well, who will be flying forward all game regardless.
True, and Dortmund's fullbacks haven't been tested defensively in the past 2 games, and then you talk about Alphonso Davies as an absolute rocket on that left-hand side. It's going to be a massive test for that Dortmund defence, and if Mats Hummels is injured, that's why he got dragged off today. It's going to be a long night for him.
It could be interesting because I would say today the player with probably the most attacking threat, I guess, on the Wolfsburg side was probably on Babu finding space on the right hand side. So that
I brought it up before about the crosses he put in, and if it wasn't Weghorst, that was Robert Lewandowski, he'd make better runs and be able to profit more from crosses like that. And you can imagine Bayern are going to pepper the box with crosses after what they've seen today from Dortmund. And I did think when I was watching Mbabu that he looks as though he's made to come and join a Premier League club. And you made the point that he might be a better option than Serge Aurier at right back for Tottenham and Jose Mourinho.
A lot of people could be a better option for Tottenham than Serge Aurier. I also made the point that I did think he got retired by Ronaldo in the Nations League, but apparently not. But there's been some talk about Mbabu. He has impressed his time at Wolfsburg. And I do think that Tottenham are screaming out for a right back, but since they sold Kieran Trippier and whatever went on there, he looks like he could be a good fit in the Premier League, and Tottenham for me it just makes sense, I suppose. It's just that easy connection to make.
And he also didn't get exposed defensively really today. I thought he put in a solid shift down that right hand side. I don't know if that's because I was comparing him to John Joe Kenny last week, who was clearly not had the positional sense or the defensive awareness to deal with Rafael Guerreiro down that side. But Wolfsburg today did alright for me, and I feel as though it's a story as old as time across all major leagues in Europe, that you've got a team that's well set up, well drilled, good at what they do, very technically adept, very able to move the ball from back to front. But again, you come into the front part of the field up front, and they just don't carry a threat to score a goal. And that's where Dortmund can be got at. You made the point about the defence, and I feel as though it's just going to be an absolute nightmare for them on Tuesday night.
We say this a lot about the Premier League, is that the Premier League is split up into mini leagues, and that you've got, well, at the minute you've got the top one, and then you've got there's 4 or 5 teams underneath that, and then they all break up into little leagues of 4 or 5. And having watched a bit more of the Bundesliga, and you get a bit more of understanding of the teams that we don't usually watch, you can see that it happens a lot more in other leagues, more than you realise as well. Because they're saying on commentary that Wolfsburg are almost vying for that best of the rest, and you could see that although Dortmund weren't the best, in the end it was a pretty comfortable victory for them. 2-0 away from home. It's one of those routine wins, I suppose, that you expect those teams at the top to be making.
Yeah, I do think Dortmund became a lot more at ease when Jadon Sancho came on, because he just brought a quality and assurance about himself, and just added rocket fuel to that attack, particularly on the counter. And I did feel though today it was as though you got the feeling that last week was, football's back, it's all new and all exciting, and this week everybody has settled down. You got more of a feel how much not having fans and the atmosphere does put a little bit of drain on the players, particularly in the first half.
Yeah, because the fans will give energy to the players. You feed off that energy the crowd gives you, and as good as it is having football back, I think the lack of fans, it could wear off pretty quickly. You wouldn't really want more than, I suppose, the 8 and 9 games that we've got left of the season. And it's just the case of they're talking about starting, especially in Italy, actually, they're saying finishing the league on the 20th of August and then starting the Italian league again back up on the 1st of September. And that starting a league again without the fans in could get quite old quite quickly.
Yeah, I just feel as though today, I don't know if it's because it's one of those games where they've still got a lot of rust on them, both both sets of players, and Dortmund didn't really look up to the physical fight in the first half. They got better as the game went on, the same as last week, really. But do you feel as though without fans, away games are more difficult for these teams? Because Dortmund made it look really difficult today.
I don't know if it's more difficult. I would say without fans, it's probably easy to go away from home because you're not competing against the opposition fans like you are usually. For example, take I know you're not going to like this, but take Anfield on a European night. Everyone always says it's a horrible place to go away from home, especially if Liverpool are chasing the league. We saw it reduce Jordi Alba to tears last year. If you're going away to Dortmund in the yellow wall, if it's not there, the home team are missing that spark, that push from the team that you ultimately don't get if you're the away side.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I just get a feeling that it just looks a lot more tentative for teams going away without fans. That's from the few games I watched last week. Even Bayern Munich against Union Berlin were really tentative in parts, even though it is Bayern Munich and they were still incisive when they got the ball forward. But it'll be something to look at as the season progresses to its climax.
It might be that at the minute, we're only a second week into the return of football. It might just be tentative because people still aren't too sure of themselves on the football pitch. You said there is that, those cobwebs do need dusting off. There is a bit of rust around the players. And maybe they're finding the whole situation a bit odd. Because it must feel like a training game at times. There was a moment in this game, maybe about 40 minutes in, where I think it was Dortmund just kind of passing the ball around. Just a little bit, getting the use of the ball, getting a feel of it. Obviously with no crowds and whatnot, and you can hear every kick. It did feel a bit eerie watching that moment, and that was, last week I said there were moments where maybe you didn't so much notice the lack of fans if you were invested in the game. But when it does slow down like that, you do start to notice it a bit more. Yeah,
possibly. There's no distractions. You see in football as it ebbs and flows throughout a game. You're not constant action, and it did feel a lot stranger today than it did last week for me personally. I don't know about yourself or the listeners.
Yeah, I get the fact that the cobwebs had been dusted off last week. For the fans, I suppose, you've got that fix of live sport, and now you kind of settle down to football just being there. But now you notice that it's different, and you're kind of going, all right, how long is it going to be for? Because I do think it will strain a little bit after 6-7 weeks of having no fans. People will go, it's not quite the same, is it? Like, you will begin to notice it more the longer it goes on.
And I also think it'll be more of a factor in the latter stages of European competitions, be that the Champions League or the Europa League, if they do that mini tournament in Istanbul that they're talking about this past week. I feel as though you'll see it more then, because that's when the main atmosphere, like the major atmosphere games you'd usually have in the latter stages of the Champions League. And I also think it'll be strange for the players on Tuesday night, because I could imagine some of them will struggle to get up for that game because there'll be less of an atmosphere around it. There's not going to be a week-long build-up of just constant let's hammer about their Klassiker like there would be normally, because there's still a lot going on outside of the football world.
Yeah, and then when you get to the end of the season, obviously you've got the formalities of trophy presentations and things like that. That will also be very, very weird, because ultimately someone will win the Bundesliga and they will be presented with a trophy, but they almost won't be allowed to celebrate. They won't, the trophy lift will be in front of nobody. There'll be no bus parades through town to celebrate with the fans. It'll just be a case of, here you go, here's your trophy, and that we'll see you next season, I suppose.
Well, if they need some pointers tonight to lift a trophy in front of no fans, I'm sure they can get on the phone to Manchester City.
I wonder how many digs people have had at Manchester City during this whole situation. Just every time they mention no fans, everyone just goes, yeah, Man City.
Yeah, true. That's just an easy target, isn't it?
I'm a big fan of an open goal, though.
And I do think, looking forward to Tuesday night, that's going to feel a lot more like proper football's back, and it'll be less of a training game once you get going on Tuesday night, because there'll be some bite in that game, especially if Bayern Munich drop points this afternoon against Eintracht Frankfurt. And I just salivating at the prospect of that game. Granted, I was salivating at the prospect of watching Erling Haaland today, and he's looked like Bambi on ice for most of the game.
Yeah, but this would be Tuesday, two proper teams in a game of football that ultimately could end up deciding the fate of the Bundesliga. But looking slightly further ahead then than Tuesday, it's been confirmed today by the Spanish government that Spanish football, La Liga, will be back on June the 8th. We've got another league to look forward to. Bit of variation on your football. And we were mentioning, we talked about this actually when the game was on. I said how watching this is almost like watching really, really good Sunday League players. Imagine how good Lionel Messi is going to look.
Yeah, watching probably the best Sunday League player in Lionel Messi. Made a point that he'll probably take on 15 players on a field, some of them which are his own team, then nutmeg the manager and then put it in the bottom corner.
Yeah, it will highlight the quality, just how good. Not as if we need highlighting how good Lionel Messi is, but it would just be really weird watching him in an almost Sunday League type setting.
I just going back again to today, I think Dortmund got a lot better in the second half, and maybe you'll see this with a lot of teams that it takes them longer and longer each week to get over the sterile and eerie nature of the stadium with no fans in. And you'll see more bite-sized, action-packed moments throughout a game, particularly in the later stages of the second half.
Yeah, I think this week maybe is kind of that. Almost the first week you don't really notice. The second week is kind of, okay, this isn't quite the same. Like, you notice more because it's not new anymore. And then you see him get used to it 3, 4, 5 weeks down the line. But with La Liga being back, how empty is the new camp going to look and feel? Because it's an open air stadium as well.
It's an absolute cauldron.
A lot of these stadiums in Germany and even in the UK, in the Premier League, if that ever comes back, are they've all got roofs on them. They're all somewhat enclosed, but the new camp is open all the time to the air. It might feel there, with it being as big as it is, more empty than most others.
Yeah, we can only wait and see on that one. But Tuesday night's going to be an absolute blockbuster, because Steve McManaman made a point on commentary today that it's the first time that this young Dortmund team have been tested in a pressure situation with title ramifications on the line, because if Dortmund lose on Tuesday night, the Bundesliga's all but over. Yeah,
it would... It'd be interesting. It's almost one of those age-old stories. The young and experienced team that want to do it against the old, experienced heads of those that have done it.
And you'll probably see how good Achraf Hakimi really is when he's going to have to defend against Serge Gnabry and Alphonso Davies running at him. You've got the main match that we've mentioned already about Thiago Alcantara and how can Dortmund nullify him and his attacking threat. But we've not really talked about the main man up front for Bayern Munich.
That's Robert Lewandowski, yeah. I mean, we spoke about him a little bit last week after he scored his 40th goal of the season for the 5th season in a row. And like you mentioned him a bit earlier, actually, that if it was him up front for Wolfsburg, it probably wouldn't have finished 2-0 to Dortmund. And that's the worry you have for Dortmund, I guess, going into the game on Tuesday.
It'll be interesting to see how many he scores today against an Eintracht Frankfurt team who I was shocked to see a 13th and only 5 points above the relegation zone in the Bundesliga. I suppose when you sell your two centre-forwards, you might be lacking in goals in the following season. But
yeah,
what if...
It would be interesting to see how they get on. Before we go, actually, you got a prediction for Tuesday. Yeah, I'd go along with that. I think it's the old heads to prevail, I think. So it's almost like one of those, isn't it? When Real Madrid get to a Champions League final, they don't lose those.
And it's also the fact that everything's lining up. Sort of Thomas Muller's ability and his attitude towards Bayern Munich was questioned at the start of the season. He's back on form like Thomas Muller of yesteryear. You've got Robert Lewandowski, who's absolutely on fire. The young flying wingers on both sides. You've got even Goretzka last week was arguably the best player on the field. And you feel as it's like Bayern Munich are just warming up again, and it's going to be a canter to yet another Bundesliga title.
How many is that in a row? How many that would be in a row now? We slagged off Scottish football quite a lot last week for 9 in a row for Celtic, but I'm fairly certain Bayern Munich might be creeping up on that.
7.
Yeah.
7. But at least Bayern Munich have won all the league titles, unlike some people who are playing green and
I'd
white.
say the difference here, I suppose, is that there is a bit of competition.
Yeah. And not saying Celtic don't deserve to win the title, they're 13 points clear this year, but it's always going to be an easy target. Like the no fans thing for Manchester City
won that night.
When they win. Yeah, when they win 10 in a row next year, all the Rangers fans will just be, oh, well, last year you didn't really win it, did you? Which is a shame for Celtic, and I'm sure they could have got the Scottish Premiership back on.
But probably that
it's one of those.
That ninth title. On that note, then, I think that's everything from me. Is that everything from you? Yes,
all good. We'll get the Juventus Project Rebuild podcast out for you starting next week. It's been delayed a little bit through scheduling early this week. Not early this week, late this week. But we'll definitely get it done on Monday.
We'll be back out with that next week. We'll obviously have an instant replay for it next week as well. But yeah, we'll be back with you at some point early next week. We hope to see you then, and we look forward to the Klassiker on Tuesday.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we don't do an instant replay in Dortmund again next week. We'll pick Bayer Leverkusen.
We'll pick someone different and watch, and then Dortmund will go and win 6-0.
True. It's good to see Kai Havertz again scoring 2 today.
Yeah, his penalty was almost saved. Keeper got 2 hands on it, but almost isn't almost enough, I'm afraid.
And you've seen it again with Rafael Guerreiro, just to finish off on Dortmund. He's 8 goals this season for a left back.
3 in his last 2.
Yeah, and you're going to see that a lot more in a modern game of full-backs being asked to score double-figure goals each season, which is something to look for as we progress at the tail end of this season and into next season. But I think that's everything. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter at MatchDay_Review. Subscribe to us on YouTube. It's just MatchDay Review. Check out the clips of the podcast that are up there, Project Rebuilds. Give us a like, comment, and like I say, subscribe. And I think that's about everything in it. Check out MatchDayReview.com.
And give us a follow on Twitter as well, MatchDay_Review. And always don't forget, if you can, leave a comment or a rating on Apple Podcasts if that's where you're listening. And any word of mouth as well, if people are looking for things to listen to during lockdown. Any help in that department is much appreciated as well. But we shall be back with you next week. Yeah, it's good to speak to you, Jadon. Speak to you again next week. Speak to you again. Yeah. Bye. Bye-bye. Do us a favour, Ed, and just clean that last bit up, because I mentioned Twitter about